I'm going to level with you guys. I'm very excited for this video. So if you don't already know, yesterday I put out a community post asking if you could only change the rating of one tornado in all of history to an EF-5 rating, which one would you choose? And I put out a few answers, including Valonia, Arkansas, Greenfield, Iowa, and Mayfield, Kentucky, but I also added this fourth option where I said other, and if you wanted to add another one that you thought could have been rated EF-5, you could comment it down below, because I knew people were going to have other opinions than these three options, obviously. And oh boy, you guys did a lot of that. So in this video, we're going to be scrolling through what I think were some of the best suggestions for tornadoes that could have been rated EF5 here in this comment section down below. So let's go ahead and get right into it. But before we do, make sure to like and subscribe as it helps out this channel a lot. And if you'd like to, feel free to become a member by clicking the link down in the description. So starting off, we had Mr. Storm voting for the Tuscaloosa, Alabama tornado pretty much as soon as the community post came out. This tornado was rated high-end EF4, but had significant ground scouring, slabbed homes, and was a very violent long-tracking tornado. So he's making the argument that this should be upgraded from an EF4 to an EF5 tornado. So if you've somehow been living under a rock for the past 14 years now in the weather community and you haven't seen the Tuscaloosa Birmingham tornado, this is a picture of it. This isn't the biggest picture that you could find of it, but even here it is a pretty big wedge tornado in downtown Tuscaloosa there. This tornado was on the ground for over an hour and a half straight, obviously part of the infamous 2011 super outbreak here. So this was rated with the highest wind speeds being 190 miles per hour. If you're unaware, a tornado has to have 201 miles per hour to be rated an EF5 tornado. So 11 miles an hour off there of that EF5 rating. It ended up causing 72 fatalities total, over 1,500 injuries, and $2.4 billion in damages, which at the time was the costliest tornado ever until just a few weeks later, the Joplin tornado ended up striking. So here's radar imagery of the unbelievable Birmingham Tuscaloosa tornado here. This is something that you will almost never see. Sure, you see violent tornadoes and you see tornadoes hit big cities, but you don't see violent tornadoes hit big cities very often, but this was certainly an exception. Look at that insane velocity couplet entering the town of Tuscaloosa with that crazy supercellular look on reflectivity, debris ball, and everything. Crazy looking tornado there on radar, and the damage that it ended up causing was significant. This is a photo here of slabbed apartment complexes from the tornado near Alberta City, Tuscaloosa. And we also had a significantly damaged home from Concord, Alabama, completely slabbed, and this is one of the EF4 damage indicators that we had here. It was an extremely well-built home with anchor beams and everything, I believe, and it ended up getting completely destroyed. And the Wikipedia article here on this tornado actually does have a little statement saying the final rating of this tornado was a source of controversy, as some survey teams concluded EF5 damage while others did not. The structures that were swept away by this tornado were either improperly anchored, lacked interior walls, or were surrounded by contextual damage not consistent with winds exceeding 200 miles per hour, and as a result, an EF5 rating could not be applied. Therefore, it was given a final rating of high-end EF4, with winds estimated at 190 miles per hour. Now, do I think this was an EF5 tornado? Well, if we take a look at the track here on Tornado Archive, again, this touchdown just west of Snotty, Alabama, tracked northeastward and left several swaths of EF4 level damage in downtown Tuscaloosa, and even as it made its way towards Birmingham, it was still a pretty strong tornado, causing some EF3 level damage. But the most significant damage again came out of the Tuscaloosa metro here, and if you see, these swaths of EF4 level damage are massive, and I personally do think that this should have been rated EF5. Here's my reasoning. At the time, the EF scale was still a brand new thing. We just got done using the F scale for rating tornadoes, and we were just onto the EF rating scale, right? So we didn't have a ton of knowledge exactly on how damage indicators worked. And again, if there were multiple teams surveying the damage and saying that there were 200 plus mile per hour winds estimated by damages, and we weren't super confident there in the damage rating system at the time, then it is very likely that if that were to happen today, there will have been homes damaged by EF5 level intensity. And also, if you're not aware, the 2011 super outbreak was massive, one of the biggest tornado outbreaks in history, so there were plenty of other massive tornadoes that had to be surveyed that day. So the Tuscaloosa Birmingham tornado was not the main point of concern, and probably if they put a little bit more research into the damage there, it could have gotten rated EF5. So in my opinion, yes, the Tuscaloosa Birmingham tornado should have been rated EF5 instead of EF4. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at Mr. Tank's suggestion of the Chickasaw Blanchard, Oklahoma Oklahoma tornadoes. Now, he did mention that these were twin tornadoes, which is true, but there's really only one of them that you should take into consideration of whether it's an EF-5 or not, and that is the main Chickasha Blanchard tornado here, rather than the Goldsby tornado, which was still very strong and very intense, and maybe we'll do a separate video someday talking about what was the most intense twin tornado situation. But for right now, we're mainly going to be focusing on the Chickasha Blanchard tornado, right? So here's imagery of this nasty thing just northwest of Blanchard, just south of the famous town of Bridge Creek, southwest of the famous town of Newcastle. Just a little side note, if you're not aware, central Oklahoma has been a hotspot for EF-5 tornadoes, so that's another point of controversy of why this is rated EF-4. Another reason is because its highest rated winds were at 200 miles per hour. So again, if they bumped that up any level, that would have gone up to an EF-5 intensity rating, right? 1 mile per hour off of the EF-5 rating. They're currently rated high-end EF-4. It was on the ground for almost an hour straight, touchdown off to the southwest of Blanchard, and eventually made its way through other sections of central Oklahoma there. Now, at first, it was causing less significant damage, EF-2, EF-3, low-end EF-4 level damage, but the significant thing to note here was the well-constructed home north of Blanchard on Kitty Hawk Road that was partially swept away at 190 miles per hour, being possible EF-5 damage there, noted by the Wikipedia article. This was a house with anchor bolts and everything. You can also notice tossed cars in the back there, obviously hugely deep-oaked trees, very significant damage to this house. Now, again, as per usual, this Wikipedia article here has mention of whether or not this should have been an EF-5 tornado. We can see that the most violent tornado damage occurred in this region here. 10 by 100 of asphalt was stripped off by the tornado. Numerous trees were blown down and severely debarked, and the ground was scored, and some part of the pavement was gone there from flying debris. A well-built brick veneer home on Kitty Hawk Road, the one that we just looked at, was said to be possible EF-5 level damage, as it had anchor bolted sill plates and some of them remained intact. And the south side of the home was mud blasted, but due to the fact that some of the anchor bolts were missing their washers, the damage here was rated 185 miles an hour, and then this home here that we were just taking a look at got rated 190 miles per hour. So should this have been an EF-5 in my opinion? Personally, I'm going to say probably not on this one, but it's very iffy because, again, at the time, the EF scale was such a new thing whenever this tornado happened. Also, there were several other tornadoes that were very significant this day that crews were taking a look at. So it is certainly possible that there was EF-5 level damage, but this tornado was the probably secondary focus of the day here, obviously right after the El Reno, Oklahoma tornado, the El Reno Piedmont EF-5. But this was the second most focused on tornado of the day, so it's not like our Tuscaloosa Birmingham situation where it kind of just got swept under the rug just a little bit more than it probably should have been. This tornado got a lot of attention, and a lot of crews went out to survey this thing, so I would imagine that this probably can stick with the very high-end, but still somewhat controversial EF-4 rating, in my opinion. So now we're going to take a look at Just Cause's request of the Rolling Fork, Mississippi tornado, and also His Story is Fashion's request of the Rolling Fork, Mississippi tornado. So obviously, this is the most recent entry on this list here. We're not going to be looking at the Greenfield tornado today, as that was one of the options that I originally had in the community poll. If you want me to do another video like this about Greenfield in the future, feel free to let me know. But this was the most historic tornado in recent history, in my opinion. There is a whole nother mention here in the Wikipedia article, once again, about possible EF-5 intensity. Ooh, there's a whole section about it. So what gave it the 195 mark? And the best answer to that is what didn't give it the 200 mark. The Green Apple Florist, essentially a single-family home that was modified to built to be a floral shop, and it is slabbed to the ground and swept clean. Why not F5? Why not EF-5? And two things really stuck out to us from the consensus on why not EF-5, and this is from Logan Poole in March 2024. One was this building, even though it was extremely destroyed. I mean, on its own, taken out of context, I think most people would agree this would be representative of an F5 tornado. The damage to that building, if there ever had been two of these side by side that had suffered the same fate, then maybe we could have had more confidence on that, but we didn't. But it was to the point that we were very close, and this is probably about as close as you'll get across that threshold without making it. A question we get a whole lot is, how can you be so sure that it was a 5 miles per hour difference from F5 but not quite there? And the answer to that is that we aren't. So they're literally saying that maybe this should have been an EF-5 tornado, which is pretty crazy to me. And if you want my opinion on it, I think that automatically makes it an EF-5 tornado if the damage survey crews that rated it an EF-4 tornado are going back and saying, hey, maybe it was an EF-5 tornado. I think that that definitely means that it probably was an EF5 tornado. Again, they literally said if two houses in a row had that same level of damage to them, they could have rated it an EF5 tornado. But instead, since it was only one home that had that level of damage, it wasn't technically consistent enough to be rated an EF5 tornado based off of 200 plus mile an hour wind speeds. But I just disagree with that, in my opinion. Again, obviously no hate to that team. They did an excellent job surveying the damage with this tornado here. But 17 fatalities, 165 injuries. I personally believe the Rolling Fork tornado should have been an EF5 rated tornado. I think another reason they probably honestly didn't consider doing it quite as much is because it had been over a decade at this point already since we had seen an EF5 tornado. So the next EF5 tornado that actually gets rated that is going to have so much controversy around it unless it is just incredibly clear that it's an EF5 tornado, like literally a like Bridge Creek Moor type situation. Like it is going to be so controversial, I think. But yeah, in my opinion, Rolling Fork should have been an EF5. Lastly, we've got Ridge Gillespie. Let me know if I'm pronouncing that right, suggesting the Middle Tennessee 2020 tornado. I assume they're referring to the Cookeville, Tennessee tornado here. This is a really interesting one because it was on the ground for only a few minutes, but it got that EF4 rating. Now, if you look here, the highest winds were rated 175 miles per hour. It caused $100 million in damages, caused 20 fatalities and 87 injuries, 19 fatalities rather, sorry. And I would honestly argue that this was not an EF5 tornado. I'm just going to say it straight up, but I think that if it was on the ground for too much longer, it certainly could have been. This was EF4 damage to a home in Cookeville, but if we had, this kind of tornado that was an EF5 rip through a big city, we would know that it would be an EF5 because there would be plenty of damage indicators around. It had plenty of big-time homes and businesses around it. And again, this is the level of damage that they did to it. Not quite EF5, but high-end EF4. So in my opinion, no, this was a high-end EF4 tornado, but I could definitely see the argument that this should have been upgraded to an EF5. Just overall, a very interesting tornado, and in the future, we might actually talk about it a little bit more. So that's going to be it for this video. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to like and subscribe. Again, feel free to become a member down in the description below. Obviously, it's not required, but you do get exclusive access to early videos, forecasts, and more. So make sure to check that option out if you are into that kind of stuff. Thank you all for the support recently. Thank you for everybody that has become a member in the past several days, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.